Time again for Talking Dogs with Ian Grant, owner of Vermont Dog Boarding and Behavior, VFW Drive Hyde Park. It's the show that delves into the socializing, behavior, training, nutrition, and wellness of your dog. And brought to you by Guy's Farm and Yard with locations in Morrisville, Montpelier, Williston, and St. Albans. And we're back with the trainer Ian Grant, and this week it is testing versus training. So I guess we should specifically define those terms. So let's start out with what testing is.
Testing would be, we haven't done any training for a certain situation, and we're just going to test our dog to see how they react to it.
Is this like a pop quiz?
Yeah, maybe you take your dog to Petco, and you go, hey, let's just see how this goes. No leash work, no riding in the car has happened.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the gist of testing. Also, hey, we just got this rescue dog. We're not sure if it's good with other dogs. Let's just test it and see how it is with yours.
Let's bring it in with Petco and see how they like it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the synopsis of testing. Training, I would hope by now, after how many years of this show?
Over 6 years now.
Yeah,
almost 7.
I think we all know what training is, the time that puts into it, the repetition, the consistencies, with all of that. The reason I kind of came up with this subject matter was that I had a client in recently, and we were working on her dog getting used to other dogs, and her dog tended to be very reactive, or I should say overreactive. A lot of barking, lunging, the whole thing. And so I always start from a distance.
Yes.
Because we have, and this is my opportunity to train the owner what the body language is like, how to read your dog, how to understand it, that whole thing. And so we're doing a little bit, we're talking about it. Dogs are at a distance, and she goes, well, what happens if you just cut that other dog loose? And I said, are we testing or are we training?
Sounds more like testing.
It was definitely testing. And here's the thing that goes along with testing too. I hope you have a backup plan for that type of situation, because if her dog is overreactive towards dogs and we let that other dog loose, we cut it loose, and then all of a sudden something bad goes down. Well, now we have to look at the repercussions of that, because now that gives her dog yet another reason to overreact.
Oh, boy.
The dog again goes back to that bad place in the bad headspace, and then who knows what it's going to do to the other dog.
So you've exacerbated the problem, really, by testing.
Yeah, so we spend 15 or 20 minutes just talking about body language and her dog and how to go about this, and then, hey, can we just test this out? Yeah. So you can see, if we're not careful with these types of situations of, okay, you go and adopt a rescue dog on Saturday, and then on Sunday, let's take it to the dog park to test it out. You tend to play with fire here, and I remember a trainer said one time, make sure you're not setting your dog up to fail, because that can certainly hurt the relationship long term, the relationship you have with your dog. But also, if we're just constantly correcting, if our dog fails and we have to correct and fails and we have to correct, it's not really the ideal way to have a relationship with your dog, when you could have a much better and fun time training and working with them, and maybe, sitting in a parking lot of a dog park and working from them from a distance to start with. So there are ways to take things slower instead of testing.
It would seem to me that anybody who has the attitude of testing, that just by the terminology and the definition, they don't have a backup plan. If they're just testing, then they don't know what's going to happen. They're just hoping for the best.
Exactly. And unfortunately, I hear a lot, especially from local, rec paths and that kind of thing, where somebody may have their dog off leash because they're testing off leash. And then next thing you know, they're chasing their dog through town because they didn't have a backup plan of what to do and how to make it work. And really, this comes to just slow down. Just slow down. Think about incremental steps. In that type of situation, if you're working with your dog and you want him to be off leash eventually, we can't just unhook the leash and test. We have to put a long leash on the dog, and let's train the dog to stay within a certain vicinity of us, and put the repetitions in there over time. And then eventually, something as simple as that can lead to off leash, but that's months of work. We can't just unclip the leash, not have a handle on the dog, and cut it loose.
So it's almost like when you're bringing your dog to the house for the first time, you've just adopted the dog, whether it's a rescue dog or whatever, and just letting them run through the house. It's pretty much the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, let's test this out and make sure. Maybe And then the house training begins, right?
Yeah.
Because the dog starts to go and and go to the bathroom on the corner of the couch and the corner of the counter.
And you're already behind the 8 ball before you even start.
Yeah, that's 5 steps backwards instead of taking 5 steps forward. So you can see that there's a lot of situations where this situation can come up as far as testing and training. But even remotely, if you have that thought in your head of going, let's see what happens if, don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Yeah, it's better because then you're starting out behind. So it's better off once you start out, I can see why. Take it slow, and teach them as they go along, because otherwise they're going to be confused right off the bat.
Yeah, and it's the difference between being proactive to reactive to the situation.
Yeah. Back with our question from the doggy bag in just a moment here on Talking Dogs. Back with Talking Dogs with Ian Grant from Vermont Dog Boarding and Behavior, VFW Drive Hyde Park. Find out more about his programs and his facility. Go to VermontDogBoardingAndBehavior.com. The question this morning, Ian, is, and I got a chuckle over this when I first looked at it, how can I get my dog to take me seriously? Tika, you coming in? Nah, I'm not coming in.
It's much more exciting just sitting out here than walking inside with you.
Yeah, sure. I'll be in. I'll be in any time now.
Yeah. I had a training friend of mine say, we can't always be number one in our dog's eyes. And those are those situations. But when it comes down, and I hear this a lot, how can I get my dog to take me seriously? Usually there's a gap in the relationship somewhere, and it can be different. I have to kind of dig in and kind of figure out really what's going on through the dog's eye. It's how they're perceiving everything. A lot of times for people that are struggling with taking them seriously, I also look at it and go, it may not always be just being serious. It may also be how you're walking your dog. Are you playing with your dog? What you represent to your dog? Because if you actually just represent a toy to your dog, which this can happen with small kids, unfortunately, they can just represent being a toy. And then things can get out of hand. But also the other part of it too is, what do you have in place for rules and boundaries? Because if you don't have anything in place, if they can just romp anywhere through the house and up on the furniture and looking out the window and barking at anything and everything, jumping on people, food's always available, basically everything that we've told people to do over these years to help train their dog, if you're not doing any of it, you're probably going to run into some sort of a problem like this.
Yeah, I was going to say that, actually, that if you're training, but you're not training consistently, you discipline them for something one day, and then the next day, you let it go. What kind of a message are you sending? So they're probably figuring, well, he's not going to do that, or he's not going to make me do this. And so sometimes it's a little bit self-inflicted.
Yeah, and we have to look at this and go, what kind of a routine are we creating? Are we, am I providing some mental stimulation, some exercise every day? Are we playing every day? What kind of relationship do we have? And so, we have to break that relationship down. So, unfortunately, there's no flip of the switch that I can say you have to do X in order for your dog to take you seriously. But it is a relationship thing that you kind of have to take a look in the mirror and figure out what's going on.
If your dog is just an object in the room, then don't expect to get the same consistency at the end.
Exactly.
If you have a question for Ian, you can email him directly to info@VermontDogBoardingAndBehavior.com. Next week, moving like your dog.
So this is exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, it does.
And we're going to talk about it because it's actually been fascinating. I've been doing it with some of my clients, and I'm getting a lot of amazing feedback with it. So it'll be fun to talk about.
I could really strain myself if I do half the things Tika does out in the yard. That's
Isn't
for
that
sure.
the truth?
Yeah. On Talking Dogs with Ian Grant, brought to you by Guy's Farm and Yard, with locations in Morrisville, Montpelier, Williston, and St. Albans. And for the trainer Ian Grant, I'm Roland LaJoy, and we are Talking Dogs.